Well, the Chicago Bears defensive line as a whole had 6.5 sacks, and they just doubled it on the season by landing Montez Sweat of the Washington Commanders. Here to break it all down is the host of Locked On Bears, Lauren Cox at Cox Sports 1 on your favorite social media. Lauren, this seems like a big move here again for the Chicago Bears. Let's start off with the big question. Is Montez Sweat worth the second-round pick that the Chicago Bears just sent to the Commanders?
The challenge here is that it's going to be an early second-round pick and could be as high as the first second-round pick that they just traded and had last season when they traded for Chase Claypool. But Montez Sweat, to me, it's a calculated risk for the Bears. I think it is worthwhile when you evaluate where the Bears have an opportunity to add at edge rusher. It's very hard to get premium players at that position. Most of the time, the really good ones don't hit free agency, and the really good ones in the draft don't last all the way until the second round. So the evaluation here is Montez Sweat right now better than the guys I think I could get if I drafted one with that second round pick? Because I think Ryan Poles looks ahead at this draft class and sees the Bears might have 2 top 5 picks, top 10 picks, and there's not really that like one elite edge rusher at the top of this draft that's really going to be the guy. And so if you're not going to take one with either of those 2 first round picks because there's not a guy at the top of the draft, how else am I going to get a premier edge rusher? If there's not one in free agency, not at the top of the draft, then it's Sweat versus who I could take in the second round. The draft is a little bit more of a crapshoot than a guy you've seen play for 4 or 5 years in the NFL now. And Bears have plenty of cap space to sign him. So it's an insurance policy to get an edge rusher for a defense that desperately needs one.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there 100%. I've seen a couple folks ask why trade away that second round pick when you could just draft an edge rusher, or is he better than what you can get? I mean, this is a guy that you've already seen produce at the NFL level. None of those guys in the draft have produced at the NFL level because they ain't in the NFL yet. So you mentioned that they have the money to re-sign him. There's always sort of the complication that comes with bringing a guy on a contract year and getting that player done on a long-term deal. That sounds like that shouldn't be an issue for the Chicago Bears.
In theory, it shouldn't be an issue, but not had a great track record here in terms of contract extensions with players that are coming up on free agency. But a lot of it was like guys that Ryan Poles didn't draft or Ryan Poles didn't acquire. You know, they traded away Roquan Smith in lieu of signing him to a contract extension. Jaylon Johnson requests a trade when they're not able to come to terms on a contract extension. And they've had a couple of their guys along the way, like Darnell Mooney is still pending on a free agent. They only like one player have they really reached a long-term deal with that wasn't, someone acquired by Ryan Poles. But it seems to be like when he goes and gets a guy that he wants, like he knows I'm willing to pay a certain amount for this player. And he's not going to go carte blanche for it. But the Bears also have that franchise tag in their back pocket just in case something goes wrong with Montez Sweat. Now, of course, they could use that on somebody like Jaylon Johnson. But, I think they have priorities here, and getting an edge rusher that they can afford or at least franchise tag and then work out the details later. I think they've got enough security here that they're not going to like trade for him and then let him walk in free agency this year.
Yeah, as the former head coach of a former Chicago Bear once said, good edge rushers don't just grow on trees. And so when it comes to a Montez Sweat, who is one of those good edge rushers, what is it that he brings to the Chicago Bears defense that they felt they needed so desperately?
They are so desperate for a defensive end. Like he has a pulse and plays defensive end. That's just like anybody on the street who could come in and work out for them at the pass rush they absolutely need. But Montez Sweat obviously elevating that to a much higher level there. A guy who not only is a great pass rusher with proven production, turnover generated a couple forced fumbles this season as well. The Bears have not been a great turnover team this year, but a guy who's also reliable against the run. Like that's something that under Matt Eberflus, they've been particularly, poignant on. Like, we're not just going to sign guys that can purely pass rush. Like we need our guys to be able to play the run. That was a criticism of Unique Ngakoue, but they defended Ngakoue on the run from the first day they brought him. He's like, we like him in the run and in the pass rush. And in the preseason, they shaped their 53-man roster by guys that can stop the run and rush the passer. Obviously, you're trading a second-round pick because of his ability to rush the passer. He gets sacks. He's proven that and has a variety of skill set, a repertoire of pass rush moves. This is not a guy that you're trading for and hoping he gets better in Chicago or hoping that he takes some big next step in his career. Like, you've got him. Like, sure, he needs to keep growing into his prime, but there's a certain level of like proven comfort here, as opposed to like, Chase Claypool last year, where you trade for a guy and hope he gets better and hope he figures it out here. It's like, no, he's already got it figured out. So you can feel comfortable saying like, we got a guy who's going to be not only an instant impact this year, but you sign him to a long-term contract extension and he's a cornerstone edge rusher in your defense.
Sounds like a good situation for Bears fans. If you want to keep up with more on this trade and anything else going on around the Chicago Bears every single Monday through Friday, make sure you're checking out Lauren Cox over at Locked On Bears, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lauren, thanks so much, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.